this is Shep Altshuler, publisher of TimeSharing Today. Welcome to TST Broadcasting and the Resort Management and Marketing Channel. Today we are being joined by Dick Drechsler, President and Director of the Plaza Resort Club Association, located in Reno, Nevada. After 3 decades, the Plaza Resort Club is going through a timeshare plan termination. The property was originally built as a hotel, and under Dick's leadership, it was converted to a successful timeshare and is now planning to formalize an agreement with an investment group to repurpose the property to a hotel once again. Dick will provide the details of this complex transition. Hi, Dick. Welcome to the broadcast.
Yeah, good morning.
You've been a pioneer in the timeshare industry. Tell us about your background in timesharing.
You're going to age me, Shep, but I was working for a real estate development firm in Los Angeles, and we acquired 6,000 acres of what is now the heart of the northwestern quadrant of Reno. So we moved up here. I was working on that, and we had office space in a building that was a multi-purpose building connected to and adjacent to a hotel. And we discovered in the discussions with the hotel operators that they were struggling, and we had heard some rumblings about this new fangled way to develop real estate called timesharing. And so we got interested and we started exploring it. And that was my first introduction to what timesharing was all about. And that was back in 1979.
And that was the Plaza Resort Club, right?
Yeah, that's correct. It was the Arlington, I think it was the Arlington Hotel it was called, and we renamed it the Plaza Resort Club.
Tell us a little bit about the history of the resort, how it evolved and became a successful timeshare property.
Well, it was an interesting project. There's a building called the Arlington Towers that was built. It's 194 condominiums, high-rise building in downtown Reno. And adjacent to it, they built a 6-story parking structure. Somewhere along the way, within a year or two of building the parking structure, they, and I think this had been their plan because the structure was designed for this, but they built another 12 stories on top of the parking structure, and that became the hotel. And it was a lovely property when we looked at it, but they were just struggling. It was very hard in those days, much less so today, for a hotel to compete with the casinos, because the casinos obviously could subsidize the rooms, and a standalone hotel had to get a much higher rack rate in order to survive. So they were struggling, and there was some talk that they may be going into bankruptcy. So that's kind of where we entered the scene and started exploring the possibility of doing a timeshare resort. I don't know if you remember a fellow named Ron Nitzberg, but we hired Ron. He was really one of the earliest pioneers. He fell out of Florida, and we hired him, and he came out and kind of gave us a tutorial on what would be involved in converting this to a timeshare.
This was basically a hotel conversion to timeshare. So tell us about the amenities of the resort and the units.
Yeah, the units they're large hotel rooms. They're just under 500 square feet, and they come with either 2 queen-size beds and a fold-out couch, or a king bed and a fold-out couch. And we put in little kitchenette units where they have a convection microwave and they have a refrigerator, and they have the basics to do some simple cooking. What's beautiful about the resort is basically the whole 7th floor is amenities. When we started, there was a very high-end French restaurant in here with a bar that was very popular to the downtown working folks after work that would fill up. And it's got a gym, and it's got a beautiful pool. It had a sauna, but nobody was really using it, so we shut that down because it was kind of high maintenance. It's got an outside sun deck with a large jacuzzi tub. It sits literally steps from the Truckee River, and in the summertime that's full of kayakers and kids playing in the water. And they've built a little outdoor amphitheater there, and they do concerts all summer long. So it's just a beautifully situated property. It's located in the heart of downtown Reno.
And how many units and owners are there?
Originally, there were 103 units, and there were 5,253 intervals. and I think all but maybe 100 of them were sold in the initial, probably 5 years of sales. Most of it was done in 2 years, starting in 1980, and then the sales went on for probably 3 or 4 more years till we got to sell out.
And was the property turned over to an HOA? How was the board of directors configured there?
The property, in fact, was the initial board of directors were employees of the company. A lot of them came and went from the board, and then some of us stayed on. It's kind of a labor of love. I learned something at this point in my life, that there's 2 things you can't divorce. One is your children, and the other one is your first timeshare project. So a few of us have stayed on since day one and stayed on as volunteer board members.
Now, unfortunately, the purpose of this interview today is to go through the challenges and difficulties that the Plaza Resort encountered, and heading now for a potential termination of the timeshare plan and reselling the property. When did it first become apparent that the resort was heading for financial difficulties?
Well, the problem actually was created by the state of Nevada. We, for years, were able to, either through our own in-house programs or through the good auspices of brokers that were specializing in this resale of HOA weeks, to fill the gap when there was attrition. You know, these were sold in the 80s, and 36 years later, people are getting older. You know, they're now in their own 80s. So there's been a rapidly increasing amount of attrition, and like I said, we were always able to handle the resales. But a few years ago, the state of Nevada passed an omnibus timeshare act called Assembly Bill 404. And while that bill did a lot of good, it did one thing that was kind of a death blow for homeowners associations, because for years and years, I think since 2000, maybe even longer than that, the state had a specialized real estate license for timeshare sales agents called a TSA license. And, you know, it was targeted to timeshare where, you know, most general real estate people didn't really understand the nuances of timesharing. And, you know, if they could sell a $200,000 house, they'd rather do that than sell a $5,000 timeshare resale. So they passed, in this bill, there was a provision that homeowners associations could no longer avail themselves of the services of timeshare agents and had to use a licensed real estate agent. That was death. Suddenly the attrition started to grow. We didn't have the ability to resell the weeks. We searched long and hard for a year to find a resale company that would be interested. And you know some of the people we talked to, and they all came back with the same thing, and they said, we can't find any licensed real estate salespeople that are interested in timesharing anymore. So that started a downhill slide where we were accumulating timeshare intervals. They became non-performing assets, and last count we had like over 1,000 that we had taken back for failure to pay maintenance fees, and you add that to the delinquencies, and we saw a problem looming on the horizon.
Were you able to take steps to generate revenues through rentals?
We were, but you know, it's an interesting phenomenon in the timeshare business. We are not hotel people per se. So we went to the normal Expedia and Hot Deals, see if we couldn't generate some hotel revenue, but none of us are really hotel marketing people. I mean, our whole career has been catered to the care and feeding of the timeshare owners to make sure that we're providing a good product. And, you know, bonus time was one source of some rental income, and a little bit of income from generated from the internet. It helped, but it wasn't enough as the attrition and the delinquency rate continued.
Now, you felt that you took whatever steps were available to you to keep the resort solvent. And then tell us about the process that led to the decision to sell and repurpose the resort.
Well, at our board meeting in December of 2015, it became pretty evident to us that, we were going to probably be faced with running out of money sometime this year. But it wasn't an imminent problem because the developers still owned, because prior to the time they quit selling their inventory, they still had inventory that they kept in their portfolio, and they were able to do some rentals of their inventory. That went a long way to helping them pay their maintenance fees, and even as late as the first quarter of this year, the old development company made a sizable payment against their own maintenance fees. So, we saw a problem coming, but because the developer had all these years continued to pay maintenance fees on their inventory, it was somewhat mitigating, and we thought we were going to be fine. But in the December board meeting, an ad hoc committee was appointed consisting of me and one other board member to start reaching out and searching the industry to look for a possible solution to this problem that, it might have been forestalled by the developer, but certainly not a long-term solution. So that's when the work started in earnest, just a little less than a year ago.
Some challenges that resorts face in this winding down process entails two things: due process for the owners and dealing with state statutes. How did you approach those legal or other challenges?
The difficulty here is that this is a deeded resort, and we reached out to a number of hotel companies that had some familiarity with TimeSharing. Some were involved in it, and some weren't. For a non-timeshare guy, just a hotel company, when you say that you have to, deal with 5,253 deeds, Shep, their eyes just glaze over. So we had a very difficult time pursuing the avenue of finding a buyer, a straight-out buyer. It was just too daunting and too mysterious and too risky a task. And as far as complying with legal requirements, the CCNRs, the Declaration of Covenants, Conditions, and Restrictions that govern our activities as a timeshare resort and as a board, provide that to basically unwind and terminate the timeshare regime and sell the property, you need a 75% vote of the owners plus the declarant vote. They call it a supermajority in the documents. Well, at the time we started talking to hotel companies and other potential buyers, we didn't have anywhere near that kind of a vote. In fact, there was so much attrition that we couldn't even get a 50% quorum for the last few years for our owners' meetings. So, meeting the legal requirements is tough. We are endeavoring now to talk with our owners and give them some options. The goal being to recapture the title to at least 75% of the property. That will get us to a point where we still can't sell the property, short of getting a vote of 75% of the owners authorizing us to basically amend the declaration to provide for termination now, as opposed to about 4 years from now when we don't have a sunset clause in it, but we did have a clause that said there would be the first vote or the first opportunity to vote to terminate the timeshare regime in 2020. So I don't know how we were prescient enough 36 years ago to figure that this thing had a 40-year life before we better start looking at the future. But, we were pretty close considering we made it 36 years. But the process is difficult because there's no guarantee we're going to get to the 75% vote. We're pretty close, but we're not there yet. So it's a matter of talking to a lot of the owners, explaining their options and explaining the history. And I wrote a fairly long piece that I put out with the minutes of the last annual meeting, where we basically announced to the owners what was happening. A lot of them had seen it in the financial statements, as the reserves were dwindling somewhat, and the reserve for bad debt was increasing. So, people saw it coming, a lot of them. But I think the announcement by the developer in March with their last quarterly payment was that, the revelation that we really had nowhere to go, because they basically said they couldn't afford to continue to pay maintenance fees on the weeks because they just weren't generating enough income. So it kind of blindsided everybody because it accelerated the day when we were going to run out of money substantially, and so that's kind of where what we were faced with, and now we started looking at kind of desperation options. Our goal was we wanted to avoid a bankruptcy at all costs, and when we finally decided that we weren't going to be able to sell it as a conventional hotel, and we weren't going to get what the value might be based on having a resort that wasn't encumbered with a timeshare regime and some 5,253 deeds. Then we started looking for a group that would put some money basically at risk in the hope that we could clean up the title, get to the 75% vote, and be able to terminate the timeshare regime and move forward with a conversion back to a conventional hotel.
So you got an infusion of working capital, so to speak, and that's been able to carry you forward. And are you, at this point, confident that you'll reach the end zone?
Yeah, we struck a deal with an investment group that basically assumed the management agreement. And in consideration of, getting the opportunity to manage the resort, they are putting in an infusion of cash to do basically three things. One, if you can believe it, there are 32,000 deeds of record against the Plaza Resort Club. And, of course, every one of those has to be looked at. The chain of title from those deeds has to be looked at to make sure there's clear title. And then we have to do between foreclosures on people that are seriously delinquent in their maintenance fees and voluntary returns and the weeks that the association already controls. We hope we can hit the 75% and much higher percentage. Right now, we were short about 1,000 votes or return deeds from owners. We have now received, we put out a little selection sheet asking them which option they want to take, and I'll talk in a minute about what we came up with as options for the owners. But we need 1,000, and I think the last count we were at about 600, and they're coming in every day. So I have little doubt we're going to reach the 75% margin probably when we finish the foreclosures after the first of the year.
Could you just explain for our listeners so they can reconcile 5,000 owners and 30,000 deeds?
Well, because they involve people that resold them, they involve people that gave them to their children or willed them to their children or otherwise some kind of a transaction. But, if you do the math on that, it looks like every timeshare in the resort has changed hands 6 times over the 40 years. So that's what's happened. I mean, we were stunned ourselves to know that there were that many transactions. People are supposed to tell us, but, they don't always tell us.
So, in essence, you found a white knight to come in and help resolve the situation, and they obviously have a vision for the future of the resort. And what is that future?
Well, the white knight came in, and we needed money to do 3 things. If you can believe it or not, the cost estimate to clean up the title, working with First American Title Company, who's done a couple of these now and has a pretty good handle on what it takes, between their searching and issuing a title policy, between the cost of foreclosures and publication and notices and recording and transfer taxes and processing the voluntary returns, is a $700,000 number just in and of itself. Then our second goal was to keep the doors open for the timeshare users through the end of this year. That is about a $600,000 number from when we started counting about a month ago. And then we had about $200,000 of unpaid bills that needed to be taken care of. So the group that's taken over the management also has an option. And the option says if you put up to $1.5 million to cure these problems, when we get to that point and we get to the 75% vote, we will convey to you, we will then have the right to sell the building and we'll convey the real estate to you. The title company has said that they will issue an owner's and or lender's policy at the point we have the 75% vote, with an exception that there's still, 25% or whatever it is at the time, deeds outstanding that have to be recaptured some way, somehow. So at least they can get title insurance and, get their financing to do what they want. Their vision originally was to do a condominium conversion because there's a renaissance going on in Reno. Reno has kind of become it's nicknamed right now Silicon Valley East because, Apple is here, Tesla is moving their factory here. They're for their battery manufacturing. There's a whole new industrial park for kind of a high-tech industrial park that's sprung up east of town. It's feeding a whole new brand of traveler to the Reno market, and they said that the growth in the last year in non-gaming hotels is 60% growth in their occupancy and their development. Wow. So it's just been a phenomenal sea change in the demographic of the Reno traveler. And so their goal is to tap into that market. These guys are putting $1.5 million totally at risk because there's no security. And they're gambling that we're going to be able to, hit the 75% mark and eventually hit the 100% mark. And that, they'll be able to walk away with clean title to buildings. We are also thrilled that we had the good fortune to stumble across this group.
So the property must be prime and desirable from that perspective.
Well, and there's no deferred maintenance here, unlike some of the legacy resorts. We have maintained this place in pristine condition. It's been an RCI Gold Crown resort since day one. We've won that award every single year. It hasn't helped our points value very much because we're still rated as a hotel unit. So our low points value was another factor that made it difficult for us to be absorbed. Now there's a tremendous growth in vacation clubs, so one of our strategies was to reach out to the vacation clubs, see if we couldn't interest them, but that avenue closed rather quickly when they saw the points values, and they said, your points values are just way too low compared to the other inventory we have in our club, and it's going to throw us out of balance. That was another strike against us.
So you did explore so many alternatives. Just so we're clear, you said the owner's usage will terminate at the end of the year. Did I hear that correctly?
You did, yeah, although they have options.
So what are the options?
So over the years, we have gotten a number of requests from owners to simply return their deed to us and, be done with any liability. So the first option we're giving them is, we didn't know at the time we came up with these options whether we were going to be looking at a bankruptcy or not. But to those owners that just want to walk away and be done with it just because they've, kind of reached an age where they can't afford the maintenance fees, they're not traveling that much anymore. A lot of these people I talk to are in their 80s. And they're just happy to deed it back. But for those folks that are still young enough to enjoy a timeshare, and we came up with a negotiated deal with a moderately sized development and management company in the region here on the West Coast, where they would agree to provide safe harbor to our owners at one of 4 resorts in their system that meets the criteria of being both RCI weeks and RCI points, and are in very desirable locations. So for a one-time administrative and legal transfer fee, the owners are going to be able to exchange a deed at the Plaza Resort Club into one of these 4 resorts that have been identified as, comparable type resorts. The beauty of it is that we're a hotel unit, and the inventory that's been made available for this exchange ranges all the way up to 3-bedroom units. So for no upgrade fee, our owners, just for this one-time $325, and then assuming the maintenance fees at the new resort starting in 2017, our owners have the option to upgrade to any kind of a unit they want without any additional upgrade fee. So it's a really nice kind of one-time opportunity for those that want to continue. And as I said, when we sent the mailing out we sent the minutes of the owners meeting, and we also included a fairly extensive history explaining, kind of how we got here and the things we tried to do to mitigate the problem. And with it was a selection sheet where they say, okay, I want to exchange, and they check off a resort they want to exchange to, or we just want to return our deed. Thank you very much. And it's running about 30%, 70%. About 30% of the owners are saying that they want to do the exchange, and about 70% are saying, hey, thank you very much, we've had a wonderful time, here's your deed.
Right. They had full value for their investment, and it's time to move on and do something else.
Exactly. I mean, these people bought, when we sold these back in the day, in the 80s, they were sold for the $5,000, $6,000 range, far cry from what, quality timeshare costs today. And, so they've had 36 years of vacationing and enjoyment. And, for many of them, it's time. They're happy. What's interesting is, I've had over probably 150 folks so far I've talked to, and that list grows every day. So I try to spend a lot of time on the phone. As you can probably tell by my voice, I'm usually not this hoarse. But the consensus is, they're a little angry at first. They're disappointed. And when we explain what we've done, they suddenly become very sympathetic and helpful.
So naturally, change is difficult, but it sounds like you put together a plan, and you've been communicating with the owners and doing whatever you can to keep them informed and abreast and giving them some clear options so they're not being caught by surprise.
Well, I am personally taking it upon myself to talk to every owner that calls in with questions, and I'll continue to do that to keep them informed and abreast. We didn't historically capture email addresses, but I've been doing that now, and databasing all that so that we're in a position to rapidly communicate with those owners. That are also we are not closed-minded to exploring other options, and we actually are looking at some additional options for the owners. One of which might be continuing on a right-to-use or membership basis for the next few years.
Right.
As there's still going to be some significant vacancy in the hotel as these guys ramp it up. There is another couple of options that we're exploring. Some of that's going to depend on discussions with RCI that we started to see what they would see as reasonable approaches to some kind of a continuation on a limited basis. We are constantly exploring options. A lot of people have said they'd like to stay in the Reno area. There are a couple of timeshare resorts here in Reno that we might reach out to and see what could be done with them, short of, asking people just to exchange in Reno. My goal, and I say it over and over again, was to come up with a strategy that would allow the owners to and the members to exit with dignity.
What do you see as the end date to your current plan?
Well, I would think that by the time we finish the foreclosures and we get the voluntary returns, we should be in a position to hold an owners meeting probably in January, maybe February, but I'm hoping January. And that's the meeting at which we intend to take the vote to terminate the timeshare regime. So I would think that the owner would be in a position, or the management company who's got the option basically to buy the resort would be in a position to step in as the new owner in the first quarter of 2017.
Now, if any of our listeners would like to get in touch, this may stir up a lot of curiosity in the industry from other similarly situated resorts, and if any of our listeners would like to get in touch with you, how can they go about doing that?
Well, before I put my contact information, I would say to those listening, especially fellow board members, that I think the hardest decision that you have to make is the initial decision that the highest and best use of your timeshare resort may not be as a timeshare project. There's going to be boards that look at it and say, gee, this would be a great assisted living project. This would be a wonderful condominium conversion. In our case, it was right to convert it back to a hotel. If there is a higher use for your property, then you could go to other legacy resorts in your region or other management companies and strike a similar deal. What we've done is kind of to provide safe harbor for your owners then it's something you have to take a realistic and hard look at. Not every resort is going to have that capability. Some haven't been able to keep the maintenance up for lack of funding and other issues. So it's incumbent, I think, on every board that's facing this same type of problem, and I hear it all the time in the meetings that you conduct, that many, many resorts are facing the same issue. So it's really incumbent to take a realistic assessment of the property standing alone without the timeshare regime and then look at various options. But it's kind of funny. I always say the definition of an expert is somebody who's done something once. So I'm more than happy to talk to anybody. My cell phone number is 310-923-1259. You can usually catch me on that, although I am on it a lot talking to owners. And you can always leave a message. And my email address is R, and my last name Drechsler, so it's RDRECH, S as in Sam, LER @hotmail.com.
I want to thank you for joining us today. I know it's been mixed feelings, sadness, and you have to look at all these years of happy vacations that you provided for so many people.
Well, I appreciate your interest and your willingness to spread the word that there are some viable solutions out there.
And this concludes this program of the Timeshare Resort Management and Marketing Channel. Through the Timeshare Board Members Association and Timesharing Today, we are looking at the challenges and opportunities for legacy timeshare resorts and their owners. If you would like to comment on today's program, please email staff@tstoday.com, subject plan termination. Until next time, happy timesharing.